In the year, within about a year, imagine this scenario. You get the whole family loaded up in the family van again, and you go to the airport, unload all your luggage. They've got it all already on the conveyor belt on the way to the airplane. And you walk up to the TSA and you hand them your driver's license from Missouri, and they tell you to get lost. I'm sorry, but you can't fly today because we don't accept Missouri driver's license anymore. Imagine the horror.
The Real ID Act was passed in 2005, and in 2009, state law meant to protect the privacy of citizens kept Missouri from complying with the federal act.
If they don't get it fixed in the next 13 months, there's going to be havoc at Missouri airports. Missouri citizens trying to get on an airplane and having their Missouri driver's license turned down.
Missouri.
So that is the airport director out in Kansas City talking about what's going to happen if this doesn't get fixed somehow. You would have to basically show a passport, I'm guessing, instead of a driver's license. We've got State Representative Kevin Corlew joining us right now from District 14. He is a Republican, and he's working on a bill that might fix all of this for us. Kevin, how are you, sir?
Hi, Mark. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on today.
Well, thanks for giving us some time. That story caught my attention. It ran, I think, down near Springfield somewhere, was I think where the story was. But, this is going to be a problem for some people if something's not done in the next year.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. And as your listeners may know, right now, even if you are to go to federal facilities, a military base such as Scott Air Force Base or out here Whiteman Air Force Base, you have to have alternative forms of identification that your Missouri driver's license alone is insufficient.
Before we get any further down the road on the fix to this problem, kind of, if you could explain to my listeners what this Real ID issue was to begin with, because it originally, the feds passed it, back in 2005?
Yes, yeah, Mark, that's right. In 2005, Congress passed the Real ID Act. It came out of the 9/11 Commission's recommendations that the federal government would establish certain standards for identification, such as driver's license. And what they found is, for instance, in the 9/11 hijackers, among the hijackers were approximately 30 or more different identifications. And so what they were hoping to do is to have more secure identification so that someone couldn't get a driver's license here in Missouri under one name and then go to Florida and get a different driver's license under a different name and so on. So it really tried to set forth standards that would make sure that states are issuing secure driver's licenses.
But Missouri chose not to participate in that.
Right. In 2009, there were some people had some concerns. I think there was thought that this was going to be a national driver's license or a national identification, that there was going to be a national federal database of information. And so there were some concerns. Now some of those concerns have not come to fruition. And in fact, the Real ID is not a national identification. It's more a set of procedures that should be implemented in the states in order to, but the states still issue their own driver's license, and they maintain all the records within the state.
So the requirement under Real ID, then, if Missouri was to ever go to that, or if the bill that you've proposed was to become law, when you go to get your driver's license, you have to show up with more than just, a utility bill proving your address, correct?
Well, what you would do, the difference with the Real ID, and my bill actually would give Missourians the choice if they want to have a Real ID compliant driver's license or the standard driver's license that they have now. But what would happen is, in terms of the source documents that you provide, that would be the same as is now. But the difference is, under the Real ID, the DMV would be required to scan those source documents and keep them on file, whereas now they just check a box that you have them. They don't keep them. The second component that would be different is that under the Real ID, when they take your picture, they would be able to run that picture using facial recognition software against other states' databases, so that you could see, for instance, that scenario that I mentioned, that I had a driver's license in Florida, and now I'm trying to get one here in Missouri. Similar to what you might see on Facebook or social media, where that, you hover over a face and it's able to pick out.
Tell you who it is. Yeah, we're talking to State Representative Kevin Corlew from District 14 out near Kansas City, because he's introduced a bill or plans to introduce a bill. Have you introduced it already?
Well, we are under a time period called pre-filing. Our session does not start until January 4th.
Right.
But I have pre-filed the legislation so that it's already on file, and then once we get into the session, we'll begin to move it.
So this would, I'll let you explain it, but in a nutshell, it would let people who choose to go ahead and get a license that would qualify for this Real ID system.
Yes, that's right. And I think the default will be the Real ID compliant license, but people will have a choice, and if they decide, I don't need to fly, or I've got a passport, or I just don't want to participate in the program, and then they can choose to have the other license. But what it will allow our citizens to do is to travel freely on domestic flights using their Missouri driver's license as their form of identification. Also, if they work on a military base, or they need to go to federal facilities, or maybe their son or daughter is graduating from the military academy,
sure,
this would allow them not to have to go through the process of getting passports and additional identification to do those things.
Wow. So just to be clear, for example, if we fast forward 13 months and this thing hasn't passed, somebody from Missouri whose son or daughter was graduating from boot camp at a base in San Diego could fly out there and not be allowed access to the base because they only have a Missouri driver's license?
That's right, Mark. That could happen, and in fact, that part of the implementation of the act is already occurring. And so, I want to stress to people now that if you are planning to go to a military base, you need to call ahead and make sure to find out what forms of identification they will accept.
Okay, that's a good point. How about I'm probably asking you more details than necessary, but what about somebody who has a commercial driver's license, like a CDL? Is that outside of the boundaries of the Real ID?
Yeah, it would be under the auspices of the Real ID, and those would have to be compliant as well. And in fact, that's where we've already seen some issues here in Missouri. For instance, people, truck drivers that service our military bases, they have had to start bringing additional forms of identification with them. Right.
All right. Well, Representative Kevin Corlew, what's the bill number? Do you know yet? Is it assigned?
It is. It's HB 151.
HB 151. So we'll keep an eye on that, and maybe you can keep us informed as to how things proceed once you get it into committee and get it headed toward a vote.
I'd be glad to, Mark. Thank you.
All right. Hey, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Merry Christmas to you. Thank you. That is State Representative Kevin Corlew from District 14 out there in Kansas City. When I saw this story, it's one I wanted to bring to your attention because, you certainly don't want to get caught short, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more stories about it as we get closer to the deadline. But here's the problem in Missouri. The legislative session is about 5 months long. So if it doesn't get fixed between January and May, there's no, unless special session is called, there's no opportunity to fix this problem after May. Sometimes they come back for a veto session. I'm not sure they're going to need to do that this year. They might with the Republican governor in office. I don't know if they will or not, but for some people, that's going to be a priority. And here's the deal. Not everybody agrees with this fix. And we're going to talk to another state representative coming up in a couple of minutes, Paul Curtman, who tells me that he's not on board with this kind of fix. And I'll let him explain to you why in his own words. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but there's a reason that Missouri didn't go along with the Real ID guidelines to begin with. And for a lot of people, they don't like the idea of this fix. So you can see what's shaping up here. I'm not sure where it's going to go. Charles, thanks for